Hello everyone and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else. Because this is my show and it's to help me keep my mental health in line, even though I don't know what that is. Now, today I do want to go over some of the stuff that's been released so far for Commander Masters, but I want to put a very huge asterisk at the beginning of this episode. I refuse to spend $500 on a booster box. Anything I buy from Commander Masters will either be a Commander deck or it will be singles. There is no world where I'm spending that much on a booster box. That said, I am excited for the stuff in the set. I am not excited for how much the set is going to cost. So let's just jump into it with a quick reminder that I do not do full set reviews. If you want those, you can go to other places. The Command Zone will have like 5 or 6 different episodes about it, so I don't need to do that. I just want to talk about some of the cards that have been shown so far that I'm happy have been given a reprint. That said, I do have a good chunk of them, so this will probably be the whole episode. I probably won't do a midsection roll and then into like a little deck tech or something I'm working on. Right, so let's just get into it. I am going to work through this in WUBRG order, ending with artifacts, and I am actually going to skip over anything that's multicolored because it looked like most of those were in the Commander range, and I don't necessarily want to talk about too many of those, so I'm actually going to do an episode next week where I go over some of the Commanders that I'm more happy got reprints, and the list I have today actually only contains one legendary creature, so that's where we're headed. So starting in white, the first thing I saw that I was happy to see is the only legendary creature I added to this list, which is Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Now, Avacyn is very expensive, for one. She is 5 white for an 8/8 flying indestructible angel, but she gives everything else you control indestructible. Am I necessarily happy that this is reprinted on the side of being a commander? No, but I am happy to see it reprinted because it's just one of those cards that, even though it's gotten a few reprintings in the past, 5 years or so, it's one of those things that's always expensive, so it's good to see here. Next up, I want to talk about Flawless Maneuver, and quick spoiler for the rest of the list, I'm going to talk about each of these spells because they desperately needed reprints. Even though Flawless Maneuver was reprinted not that long ago, it's good to see it here too. So Flawless Maneuver is 2 and a white for an instant. If you control your commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. Does this seem super powerful? No. But the number of times I've been able to survive a board wipe and then end a game because I had a Flawless Maneuver and my commander out, I'm happy to see this card continually reprinted. Now, I do have, just a couple other white cards that I'm happy to see get reprinted. The first one is Land Tax. It's a single white enchantment. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent has more lands than you, you can go get 3 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. It's great because it doesn't limit you to just getting planes, but typically where I play this or where I see this played is decks in white or mostly white, just to, get things. And then I want to round out white by talking about Smothering Tithe. It's 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If they don't, you make a treasure. When this card came out, a lot of people were like, oh, this card's sucks, all this jazz, and then all of a sudden it was $40. I'm always going to be happy to see a reprint of Smothering Tithe. Now, that rounds out what I was looking at for white. Yes, there is a lot more. I do not care. So, moving into blue in WUBRG order, first up I have Capture of Jingzhou, which is 3 blue for a sorcery. Take an extra turn after this one. The whole reason I'm talking about this is because this is one of those portal cards that was just prohibitively expensive because of how scarce it was. And now it's less scarce. I don't know how much being in a Commander Master set will affect it, but at least now it's a lot more obtainable. Next up, we have everybody's least favorite board wipe, which is Cyclonic Rift, but it's good it's here. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. Return an online permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and it has Overload for 6 and a blue, which means you replace target with each. It's just one of those cards that's always good and is constantly encroaching that $40 mark. So it's good that it's here, right? Next up, we have the second in that cycle of free if you control your commander, and that's Fierce Guardianship. 2 and a blue for an instant. If you control your commander, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. Arguably, I do believe this is the most powerful of those. If you have your commander, your spell is free cards. Is it my personal favorite? No. I mean, there's no... I can't hide it. Blue is not my favorite color, okay? When I look at the blue section, I'm like, I mean, that's cool, but even looking at my decks, most of the decks I play with blue are not blue decks. So let's just move on. The last card I have for blue is actually Spellseeker, which is 2 and a blue for a 1/1 human wizard. 1 Spellseeker enters the battlefield. You may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with mana value 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Again, it's whatever. Like, I have a Wizards deck with Adelies that would love a Spellseeker, and I've just never had the opportunity to grab one. But, yeah. So, that's actually all I have for blue. I'm going to move into black. And I'm going to start with the Archfiend of Despair, which is 6 black for a 6/6 demon with flying, and your opponents can't gain life. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. So it's a wound reflection on a creature. This was originally in Battle Bond, and it's just good to see it get a reprint here because, well, clearly we're never doing another Battle Bond or Conspiracy, and that makes me sad. And now I'm sad. But moving on, we have our third in the free if you have your commander. It's Deadly Rollick, which is 3 and a black, and it just exiles a creature. Nice, easy, said and done. We're good. So we'll move right into the next one, which is Demonic Tutor. I know tutors get a bad rap, but Demonic Tutor is one of those things that's always going to cost money. So it's good to see it reprinted. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery. Search your library for a card, put the card into your hand, and then shuffle. And if you're me, the text says search your library for a land, put that land into your hand, and then shuffle. That's... Funnily enough, that's kind of what I use mostly Demonic and Vampiric Tutor for. It's like, oh, well, I have a cheap way to find a land in a mono black deck. It's very great. Next up, we have the Kindred Dominance. Now, I haven't seen the other dominances in the Scryfall search, but Kindred Dominance is 5 black for a sorcery. Choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the creature type. This is one of those great, it's super expensive board wipes, but it can dodge your stuff if you built your deck right. And I don't know, it's just good to see it here. Now, after that, I'm going to shift into red. And the first red card I want to talk about is actually Balefire Dragon. It's 5 red for a 6/6 dragon. It has flying, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. It's one of the biggest removal magnets I've seen, but again, it's good to see the reprint. We'll follow that up with Deflecting Swat, which is the red version of the free spell and arguably the second most powerful one. So we got 2 in a red for an instant, the whole if you control your commander thing, but you can choose new targets for target spell or ability. So it's a redirect, which is very powerful to do it for free. Yeah, that's all I got for that. Next up we have Savage Beating. Now, Savage Beating is a fun little spell that costs 3 red, but that's actually a lie. So first off, it's 3 red for an instant. Cast a spell only during your turn and only during combat. Choose one. Creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, or untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. The reason I say that the 3 red is a lie is because it has Entwine for 1 and a red. So it's actually 4 red. But a lot of times it's pay that and end the game. Alright, we're going to round out red with Scourge of the Throne. It's 6 red for a 5/5 dragon. It has flying. It has Dethrone. Now, Dethrone was from the original Conspiracy set. And that's whenever this creature attacks, the player with the most life, or tied for the most life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then whenever Scourge of the Throne attacks for the first time each turn, if it's attacking the player with the most life, or tied for the most life, untap all attacking creatures. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So, did I round out red with 2 things that let you take extra combats? Yes. Are there more? Absolutely. We're not going to dwell. I'm going to move into green, right? Now, the first thing in green I want to talk about is Arachnogenesis. It's 2 and a green for an instant. Create X. 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-spider creatures. Pretty self-explanatory. Moving on. Next up we have Craterhoof Behemoth. Everybody knows it. It's 5 green, 5/5 beast, haste. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X on a turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. This is one of the most classic finishers in Commander, and sure, a lot of people think it's uninspired, but I also think a lot of mono blue win conditions are uninspired, so let people play what they want to play, right? Next up we have Finale of Devastation. X green, sorcery, search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with mana value X or less. Put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X/+X and gain haste until end of turn. So again, this is a good way to end the game. The classic line I've seen with it so far is Finale of Devastation for 12. Get Craterhoof. You see where this is going. So then you get your 10 from the finale, and then however much you get from Craterhoof, and that should just be good game, and we move on with our life. Next up, I want to talk about a couple of cards that, well, one really needed the reprint because it immediately became a very expensive card. That's the Great Henge. 7 green. For a legendary artifact, the spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. It taps for green, and you gain 2 life. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. You can see why this went up very fast. It's very good, and I'm just happy to see it reprinted here. The other one is Tooth and Nail, which is 5 green, which is, again, a lie. But it's a sorcery. Choose one, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. Or put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Again, this has Entwine for 2. So instead, for 7 green, this says, end the game. You go get something like Craterhoof and the other thing that's like a mini Craterhoof, and you put them both into play, and you go to town. Ta-da! Now, that kind of brings me to the end of what I want to talk about for colored spells, because, again, I don't do full set reviews. I do not have the time or patience for full set reviews, so I'm going to skip through, again, all of the multicolored stuff, because we'll do a slightly deeper dive on some of the commanders and stuff that got released, but we're just going to move into the colorless stuff, and that's probably where we're going to end up rounding this out, because I'm pretty sure we're going to end up pretty close to 20 minutes by the time I'm done with this. With that said, the first 2 we're going to talk about are Arcane Signet and Sol Ring. Why? Because Arcane Signet and Sol Ring. That's why. They go everywhere. They're in everything. This is a great opportunity to pick up a few playsets of each of them, just to have them for when you need them. Lord knows when you're sitting at your desk and you're like, oh man, where did I have a free Sol Ring? You're guaranteed now to have a free Sol Ring. That's it. That's it. Ship it. Send it. Now, I do want to talk about Jeweled Lotus, even though it's kind of a controversial card from the first time it was printed. But Jeweled Lotus is 0. You can sacrifice it for 3 mana of any one color, and you can only use that to cast a commander. I still think this shouldn't be super duper expensive. I still think there's no reason this couldn't be in like a precon, like a monocolored precon. But we're going to bring it up here because it's going to be a chase card in the set of chase cards. That's all there is to it. Now, I do want to bring up, this is a great opportunity to pick up Sword of the Animist, which is a 2-mana equipment that equips for 2. It gives the equipped creature +1/+1, and when they attack, you get to go get a basic land into play tapped. And again, this is just going to be a good place to pick those up because they're not $1 anymore. Alright, and finally, Pearl, Sapphire, Jet, Ruby, and Emerald. The 5 medallions are finally getting reprinted here. And going back down the list in that order, Pearl Medallion is 2-mana artifact, white spells you control, cost 1 less to cast. Sapphire, 2-mana artifact. Blue spells you control, cost 1 less to cast. Jet, black spells you control, cost 1 less to cast, and you guessed it, it costs 2. Ruby, 2-mana artifact. Red spells you control, cost 1 less to cast. And finally, Emerald, 2-mana artifact. Green spells you cast, cost 1 less to cast. I was talking to my cousin at work on Friday, and I told him at that point I hadn't even sat down to really look at the spoilers. I had only seen a few things, but one of the first things I saw was that the medallions were getting reprinted, and this might be a good I don't know. I'm probably going to end up picking up like at least a playset of each of them. Maybe more. But yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, quick mention that, Command Towers in the set, Reliquary Towers in the set, and Rogue's Passage is in the set. But yeah, I think that's where I'm probably going to end this episode. And yeah, I think I will see you next time. Hey, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff. Believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast and me, you can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.